Hey everyone, welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, taking a look at some free agent targets now that we are past the NFL trade deadline. The only way the Broncos can add to their roster is through free agency. So I thought we'd look at the team's biggest needs and where they could fill some of those needs with some veterans still on the street. So the first need I have for the Broncos is defensive line. This team is 3-5. Now they've won 2 in a row, so things are looking better. But I don't want people to forget that they have 5 losses for a reason. And a big reason was because of this defense, and specifically the run defense. The Broncos are one of 5 teams that have allowed over 1,000 rushing yards, and they rank dead last in yards allowed per game at 154.1. Everyone is just running over this Broncos defensive line, which has some good spots. Like Zach Allen has looked pretty good so far, I would say, for what they gave him in free agency. DJ Jones is probably not living up to the contract that Denver would have hoped for, but he's been an above average nose tackle. Jonathan Harris is borderline unstartable and then quickly unplayable. And then Mike Purcell, unfortunately, is a case of you probably held on to him for a year too long. He has been bad so far. So if Denver wants to beef up their interior defensive line, there are still some good and notable free agent defensive linemen out there. Matthew Ioannidis, Akiem Hicks, and Ndamukong Suh are all free agents. Now, I think it's important to verbalize that it's November 1st. Who knows what kind of shape these guys are in? Like, these are big fellas, right? And big fellas usually like to eat, or they like to go the complete opposite direction and lose a whole bunch of weight after their playing days are over. So I can't testify as to whether or not Akiem Hicks is ready to go out there and go up against an NFL offensive lineman. But if they are in shape, I think Denver should kick the tires on some of these free agent DTs. Now, if you want to guarantee guys are in shape, you can always go poach players off of other teams' practice squads. Now, if you add someone from their practice squad, you have to bring them right to your 53-man roster. Whereas if you signed Ndamukong Suh, you could sign him to your practice squad, for example, cut the last guy in the practice squad, and just elevate him 3 times to your active roster before having to make a decision. Now, the 3 practice squad targets I've identified, a familiar face, McTelvin Agim, former draft pick by Denver. I just included him because I don't think people know he's still in the NFL, believe it or not. He's on the Colts practice squad. So there's your fun fact for the day. Tristan Hill, former second-round pick by the Cowboys. He had some effort and attitude issues in Dallas, but that has gotten straightened out, it looks like. He's on the Browns practice squad. He could be a good DT. And then Matthew Butler for the Raiders. Good SEC player that has not really found a good home so far in Vegas. And I don't know if that's a Matthew Butler issue, or maybe, just maybe, it's because he played for the most dysfunctional NFL franchise in the Las Vegas Raiders. So hashtag free Matthew Butler. But my pick would be Matthew Ioannidis. Not because he's got a really cool name, but because he's got a lot of NFL experience. He's had some good years in the NFL. Last year with the Panthers, he started 13 games, 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack. We don't need a guy to come in here in November and get 5, 6, 7 sacks or anything like that. We just need a run stopper. We need a guy who can kind of sit in the middle of the defensive line, help control the line of scrimmage, and stop giving up 154 yards on the ground every single Sunday. Now, before we get to the rest of my free agent targets, consider subscribing to the channel if you're looking for a Broncos news and rumors channel. And if you're already subscribed, I'm going to challenge you, go above and beyond, turn those notifications on, join the Noti Club, and that way you don't miss a single video. Second need for Denver, I'm going to go with cornerback. So the Broncos have one spectacular corner that does not need to be stated any further, but they have an issue on the other side of the field, and that's their CB2, which started off with Damari Mathis, who was an absolute train wreck, like worse than the Taking of Pelham 1234, 1235, great movie, but they've replaced him with Fabian Moreau, a veteran who's been better. But he's only been better because I could be better than Damari. I don't think I could be better than Damari Mathis, but your average gentleman or average in-shape player could be better than Damari Mathis. So Fabian Moreau has been an improvement, but we can do better, guys. When we look at Denver's cornerback room, you've got Pat Surtain. He's going to take care of one half of the field, but Fabian Moreau on the other side doesn't really inspire me all that much. But then there's Riley Moss. the third-round pick, the rookie, who could not buy a snap on defense, let alone even dressing for games, it feels like anymore, which is looking to be a complete bust of a third-round pick that Denver traded up to get and used a future third-round pick to secure. And here we are in November, having a major CB2 crisis, and Riley Moss isn't even getting an ounce of consideration on Sundays. So who could Denver sign? Well, Casey Hayward, longtime Charger. He's got some really good NFL experience. He's getting up there in the age column. He suffered a season-ending shoulder injury last year, but he's healthy now. And so if Casey Hayward can come and hold down the fort for 8, 9, 10 weeks, sign me up. Desmond King, a former all-pro cornerback with the LA Chargers. I think it was LA at the time. But yeah, Desmond King, unfortunately, has not really been able to stick on since having that breakout year with the Chargers. I think it was in 2019. And then more recently, Greedy Williams, the youngest of the bunch. He was a second-round pick by Cleveland. Injuries, unfortunately, kept him off the field. He went to Philly in the offseason, ultimately did not make their 53-man roster. But I've seen Greedy Williams play, and he's shown a lot of good flashes and potential. So if he's still in shape and he's awaiting a call, I think Greedy Williams would be worth a phone call to see if you can improve at CB2. Like, you look at their career stats, Hayward comes in as the most experienced player of the bunch, 25 interceptions. But Desmond King did have that one magical season with the Chargers. So if you think you can recapture a little bit of that magic for just half a year, it's important to remember, we're in November now. Like, sometimes GMs don't want to sign these veteran players in the offseason because they don't think they can play 16 or 17 games. We don't need them to anymore. We need 8 or 9 games. That's all I'm asking for. And so if one of these guys can give us better cornerback play for 9 games, I'm in, because the Broncos need help at cornerback. If you think Fabian Moreau can hold down the fort at CB2, all right, I'm not going to press you too much on that. But let me toss this your way. What if he gets hurt? There is a major depth issue. Your backup is originally your starter, actually, who got benched because he was the worst cornerback in football. If you don't want to go to him, what about Riley Moss? Oh, that's right. He's healthy scratch every single week now. So I don't know where you turn to, because CB is a big crisis for Denver. They are one injury away. Imagine if I won't even say his name were to go down. Jesus, that would be a disaster. All right, now before we get on to the rest of today's show, support for today's show comes in from our good friends over at Prize Picks. Thanks to Prize Picks, I've had the most fun watching football this season and winning up to 25 times my money. And I can also play during basketball season as well. All you do is just make selections on 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. So for this week, you can see who I'm rolling with, as we have a couple of games coming up on Sunday. I'm going with Bijan Robinson and Kyle Pitts, more than half a touchdown. I just need one of those 2 guys to combine for a touchdown. Baker Mayfield, less than 224.5 passing yards. Baker's quietly going downhill right now. And then less on Odell Beckham Jr. This is hey, OBJ's in the league, by the way. No one talks about it because he's done nothing so far in Baltimore. I don't think he's even scored a touchdown. So, testing my skills on Prize Picks this season is the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. If you have the skills, you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. We all know there can be some absolute stinkers of primetime matchups, aka the Jets, the Raiders, and the Bears mostly. But with Prize Picks, you can stay locked in on the game. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. The link for that is in the comments and description of today's video. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Third need for the Denver Broncos right now, I would say, is edge rusher, right? You could use some help at offensive line, but I think you just got to stick by Mike McGlinchey and hope he figures it out. You paid him $87.5 million to do so. So the offensive line I can kind of come to terms with. Wide receivers, you're good. Running back, you're good. I don't see a major upgrade needing on the offensive side because you didn't make any wide receiver trades. So if we go back to defense, edge rusher, you're not bad. Edge rusher's kind of fine, honestly. Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning and Nick Benito, I think, can get the job done. And I think they can do a good job as well. This isn't barely getting by. This is not minimal edge rusher play. Tossing Zach Allen as well. But I go back to the cornerback issue. Like when you look at Bonito and Jonathan Cooper and Baron Browning a little bit closer, if one of those guys were to go down, I don't know if I'm really all that excited for the Thomas Nkoum or Perkins show off the edge right now. So you might stand to add a veteran pass rusher, especially if Sean Payton really feels like this is a team that can rattle off some wins and make a deep postseason push, or make at least a push for the postseason. You're going to want some extra depth at edge rusher. So who's out there right now? Well, Melvin Ingram is probably the most notable of the bunch, I'd say. Actually, Robert Quinn, I bet, has more career sacks. But you got Ingram, Carlos Dunlap, Robert Quinn, and then I went with a young bunch compared to some of these fossils here. Takkarist McKinley, a former first-round pick by Atlanta out of UCLA. Now, Melvin Ingram, as I just called him a fossil, I would never say that to his face. He would absolutely eat me up and destroy me. Had a pretty good year a season ago with the Miami Dolphins, coming in right before the season started. 6 sacks, 1 forced fumble. After kind of bouncing around between Pittsburgh and Kansas City, he's played for 2 AFC West teams. Maybe he wants to go for the quadfecta. I don't know what that'd be called, but play for the Denver Broncos, and then he's just got to go to the Raiders after that. So let me know, what is this team's biggest need? Is it defensive line, cornerback, or edge rusher? I think it's defensive line. I know that when you watch the game, usually what goes on in the trenches doesn't get a lot of attention because you follow the ball and you watch it go down the field. But I'm telling you guys, if you're going to games, just take one snap or two, one play or two, and just watch the Broncos defensive line. They are getting manhandled right now. That's going to do it for us on today's show. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate that. Enjoy the rest of your day. We will see you all later.